Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out this evening. The establishment of America begins with the American Indians. The American Indians have in the past survived genocide and assimilation. For anyone who is interested in the preservation and continued survival of the American Indians and their cultural heritage, will be happy to hear of how this law that was passed back in 1978. Based on my research of this law of 1978 that was passed by the federal government, will directly see to the keeping and preservation of the Native American tribes and their cultural heritage by keeping all Native American children in the realm of Native American nations. The Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978 established 3 elements that will keep the American Indian children within the confines of the American Indian nation. During the time that follows, I will give you the 3-step process of the American Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978. By giving the first step in the process, and by giving the second step in the process, and giving you the 3rd step in the process. So keep in mind that there are 3 steps in this process. The first step in the process of the American Indian Child Welfare Act seeks to find a member of the child's family to care for the child. Self-determination refers to self-governing, and this is what all Native Americans pressured the federal government for. Now, American Indians can self-govern in the affairs of their children with their own tribal courts. These tribal courts will assist the child in being placed with one of their family relatives once the child has been removed from their home. The second step in the process of the Indian Child Welfare Act will seek to find another member in the tribe of the child to care for the child. If a family member of the tribe cannot be found, this is when they will seek to find a member of their tribe to care for the child. According to Lee and Sylvie's article titled American Indian Families, found in the International Encyclopedia of Marriage and Family, 2003, she states, in 1978, Congress enacted PL 95-608, which has become known as the Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978. The legislative intent behind the law was to stop the unwanted removal of American Indian children in the event removal was necessary. From oral and written testimony given by Congress, it was determined that American Indian children were being removed at an alarming high rate, a rate 5 times higher than any other children. Now, as you can see, 5 times higher than any other children is very high. Now, keep in mind that this is American Indian children compared to all other children, all other races. As a federal law, this law takes precedence over all state laws in the child custody matters involving American Indian children. The Indian Child Welfare Act sets minimum standards and guidelines for the placement of American Indian children once removal is indicated. These placement priorities apply to foster care and adoption procedures. Finding another member in the tribe is also overseen by the tribe's own court. Okay, the third final placement, the element to this is priority for the Indian child contains a first and second element. The third process of the Child Indian Welfare Act is when the tribal court seeks to find another member of a tribe outside of their own tribe. This part of the process ensures that the child has every opportunity to be heard in a Native American family. To be reared in a Native American family. The final process, the last process, is when the child will be placed outside of all Native American tribes. According to Annette Brannon and Betty Lynn Lifton, authors of the article titled Adoption, and written in 2004, a book titled Encyclopedia of Bioethics, states, many Native Americans believe that adoption by Caucasians robs them of their children and robs them of their Native heritage. When Congress enacted the Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978, giving tribal courts exclusive jurisdiction over adoption proceedings involving Native American children. As you can see, it is extremely important for Native Americans to be aware of the Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978. The Indian Child Act of 1978 establishes 3 principles that will keep the American Indian children within the confines of the Indian nation. The Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978 contains 3 steps in the process of adoption and or foster care for Native American children. Lastly, the Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978, 3 steps are family member first, then same tribal member as the child, and then lastly, a separate Native American tribe, and only as last resort, a non-Native family. So as you can see, it is imperative to be aware of this law as it affects the whole cultural heritage of these children and the American Indians as a whole. I thank you for listening and hope you have been inspired and informed. Thank you and good night.